Welcome to the show Through the Eyes of a Cricketer here on TV Arcana. My name is Kochannek, and today we have a very special guest, a man that's transcended across a number of eras, from both the World Series cricket time right through to being a part of many of the bat products that we know in today's age. Ian Davis. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Norman.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. In particular, you've got a lot of great times in your life that you've spent both on and off the field. But let's start with the way you started in cricket as a young kid. Tell us about your Nowra days through to Sydney.
Yeah, well, Nowra, I mean, back in those days, was I think 11,000 people in the whole Shellhaven. It was a really small little place, and to be able to play cricket at 8 to 10 years of age, my dad taught me how to play, and to be able to get to play for Australia was incredible. Really, it wasn't easy.
So you came to Bankstown, I believe.
I did. I came to Bankstown, and my father and I drove up the 4 or 5 hours to the trials to try and play grade for Bankstown, and I couldn't have guessed that I would have been batting against Lenny Pascoe and Jeff Thompson at 13 years of age, and they were bouncing the hell out of me. And my dad
said, hang on, Lenny Pascoe and Jeff Thompson was the first baptismal fire you had on a cricket field up in Sydney.
Yes, and they're a little bit older than me. They wouldn't like me to say that, but yeah, and they really gave it to me. It was a bit of a wet wicket as well, and that introduction to grade cricket in Sydney was very frightening, to be honest with you.
But you formed a relationship with both those guys, haven't you, over the years?
I did, yeah, and we're good friends today. I mean, they've tried to kill me a few times, but I've survived, and Tomo and I actually lived together in '76 when I played for Queensland, so I had 6 months of living with him, which wasn't easy, that's for sure.
It's funny, talking to Dougie Walters recently, he talked about the fact that he faced the likes of a Thompson Lilly in the nets as much as any Test cricketer ever faced them. Tell us about your experience in the nets with those sorts of
Yes,
characters.
I mean, you know, I did that day in, day out. In those days, the bowlers would bowl, you know, they'd get the chance to bowl quick if they could, and to play against those guys, or to net against those guys, was a great experience, but also pretty tough. You know, you had the walls of the net around you, and you felt very inhibited, but it was incredible, you know, to face those guys.
Well, in 1973 was your first Test for Australia at the age of 20.
It was.
And that in itself was a time when there were a lot of great players, and the privilege to play with them would have been immense, such as your Dougie Walters or your Greg Chappells and Ian Chappells. What is interesting to me is your experience with grounds as we are through the eyes of a cricketer. Tell me some of the experiences you had on some of the grounds you got to play at through your life. Let's start with that.
Well, I think the first time I walked onto the SCG was an unbelievable feeling, because I think I dreamt about it, you know, as a kid. I always wanted to play cricket for Australia, funny enough, even at 8 years of age. And I think deep down in your subconscious, I believed I would. And to have actually got to that stage and walked out on that ground was eerie, you know, it was incredible. And the SCG was my favourite ground, and still is today. Even walking on a couple of grounds in England like Trent Bridge, Edgbaston was incredible. Even, you know, I played 1 year for Queensland, the Gabba with the track around it, you know, the old dog track.
Yeah.
Again, was amazing. Having seen it in Nowra in black and white when they used to do the TV Shield games on TV, to actually be there was unbelievable. So,
at the age of 20, not unlike a Matt Renshaw in terms of age, yes. How did you find out about your selection?
I found out about my selection, and we were playing a one-day game in Tasmania, and I got a duck actually, but I had been playing pretty well in the Shield cricket, and that particular area, the players had just got back from England having a successful time on the '72 tour, but they were looking for a bit of young blood, and I actually replaced Ian Redpath, who I actually idolised. I thought he was an amazing player, and to be picked out of the blue like that was incredible. I heard down in Tasmania, as I said, with Brian Tabor, and there was Dougie Walters, Gary Gilmore got picked at the same time. And playing with those people that I actually idolised myself was weird. I'd only played against 5 of the guys, because I only played 5 Shield games when I got picked. So I'd only played against 5 of the guys that were in the team. I'd never met Greg Chappell. I'd never met Rodney Marsh, I think it was, and quite a few of the other players. So after 5 games, I'm playing for Australia with people that I idolised. Daunting sort of feeling.
It's funny, because during that period from about 68 to 80, which is where you started in the '73, Neil Harvey was one of the selectors with Don Bradman. Now, that to me would be daunting in itself, to be exposed to those people as selectors at the time. Tell us about experiences you had with either of those when
it was because you know, and I mean they were legends, and in their own time, and I'd looked up to those people as well. And to have Neil Harvey and Don Bradman and those sort of people around the dressing room was incredible. Neil Harvey was very black and white. That's what I liked about him. He'd say it as it was. He wanted to pick a young player, and they picked me, and he was confident in my ability, which gave me confidence, and they portrayed that. That's what I liked about them. They were very confident about walking into the dressing room at any time and giving you advice and helping you. I remember Keith Miller sent me a lovely note from the bar at the SCG down to the dressing room. I was going through a little bit of a rough patch, and just, you know, on a beer canister, just said, Ian, you know, you've got the ability, just believe in yourself, you can do it. And I've still got it at home. How incredible was that?
And through your eyes, and that must have really inspired you at that time.
Absolutely, for someone like that to believe in you and to think about you and feel for you and to try and help you, you know, was amazing, and I was very grateful for it.
We'll get back to Don Bradman in a short while as to your post-cricket days, because there is a relationship you got with him there, which I think will be very interesting to our viewers.
Yes.
From a subcontinent perspective, you obviously played for Australia. Tell us about some of the experiences with teams such as Pakistan, India.
Well, Pakistan, I did play 3 tests against Pakistan. They had a great side at the time. Imran was playing his first tour. Javed Mian Dad was on his first tour. Asif Iqbal, they had a really good, strong attack. Wassim Bari was the keeper. Sadiq Mohammed, a very good side, Zahir Abbas. And I remember Rodney Marsh saying to us in the team meeting before the first test that he'd played against Imran in Perth for the lead-up game, and he said, watch out for this guy. Like, you know, he bowls really quick for a Pakistani, because back in those days they never really had a lot of fast bowlers. And I've got to say, it was in Adelaide, and I remember the first 2 or 3 balls and this guy running in with that funny windmilly sort of action, and a couple went past my nose, and I thought, geez, where's he come from? You know, like he bowls really quick. So, and they were very aggressive, you know, they were tough test matches, those ones. There was no love lost. We had Thompson and Lilly bowling for us. Thompson actually got hurt in the second test when he ran into Alan Turner and broke his shoulder.
That's a classic moment.
But, you know, they were aggressive. They took us on and weren't scared, and it was a tough series. I think it was 1-1, and they had a good side.
So tell me about Imran Khan. How did you find him personally?
I found him a little bit aloof, but at the same time, you know, a nice enough guy. We played against each other a lot, particularly in World Series cricket. And he bowled his fair share of short balls to me, that's for sure. But I always got on quite well with him, and I liked him. Not that I like many fast bowlers, but I actually liked him. He was always, you know, a good competitor. I don't think he was ever overly aggressive, but he was aggressive enough, and I liked him.
He played for New South Wales, did he not?
He did, but I wasn't playing for New South Wales. About 83, 84. I'd just finished,
right,
and so I missed it. But you know, I did have a lot of respect for him, Ralph.
Yeah. Now, again, that era, you've played some 15 tests for Australia, but you moved into a completely new era, let's call it, shortly after that. Tell us about those so-called super tests.
Yeah, well, World Series cricket was incredible. To be part of that is special. I can remember signing the agreement with Kerry Packer. During the centenary test, I got a phone call from Austin Robinson, who was working for PBL marketing at the time. And I didn't know him well, but he'd been around the dressing room a fair bit. But he eventually found out he was Dennis Liddy's associate or manager, and helping him with Johnny Cornell, remember Strop,
yes,
and Paul Hogan. And on the Sunday of the test match, the centenary test, I get this phone call from Austin, and he said, Ian, I don't know you all that well, but would you be kind enough to give me an hour of your time? This is very, very important. Would you meet me down in the hotel for you? Just for 1 hour. You've got to do it, you know. I don't know you well and all that sort of stuff. And I thought to myself, God, this must be important. So I did go down, and he picked us up in a limo, and we went up to the old Windsor Hotel, which was about a K up the road from the Hilton where we were staying. I walked in up through the back doors up to the penthouse, and there was Johnny Cornell, Strop, who, you know, I'd met a couple of times through Dennis, but didn't know him well either. And he said, hi, how you going? Sit down. And I sat down, and he said, look, you know, we want you guys to be paid like you should be. We want you to be part of the Australian Super Test team, and Ian Chappell would like you to be part of it. And I thought the world of Ian Chappell. And I was one of the boys, you know. And so we had 7 days to make up our mind whether we were going to be part of this. We're offered $22,500 to play per year for 3 years in a 3-month period. So I didn't think it was going to affect my test series, my test jumper. I just thought it was going to be like a sidelined type thing. At that time for the centenary test, I think we got $50 a day, to play, plus about $1,200 to win the test match. So, and it wasn't so much about the money for me, because playing for Australia was special anyway. I didn't really care. But to be part of an opportunity to make a bit of money and also to play with the guys and be part of that, I thought seriously about it. I had 7 days, swore to secrecy.
That was an interesting point. You were sworn to secrecy, weren't you? How hard was that to handle, even in that time?
It was pretty hard, because I was looking around the dressing room thinking who else has been offered, but I did shut up. I didn't ask for any advice. I didn't ask my parents or anybody. I just was really caught up in that fact I had to be secretive. On the last day of the test match, we'd beaten England by 45 runs, the same as they did in 1867, which was incredible. We're having a few grogs, and Austin got into the dressing room somehow and gave me an envelope and said very discreetly, you get to keep these theatre tickets, and if we come to some terms, and put it in your bag and open it later. And I opened up, it was a cheque for $8,000. And wow. you get to keep this, if you sign, basically. So a week later, I had a bit of a think about it, and I just thought, I'm going to do this. The other blokes are in, we're all in. So I signed.
Well, you have a very special moment regarding World Series cricket, as I'm aware. You faced the first ball in World Series cricket.
Yeah, down at Moorabbin, McCosker and I opened the batting, and we went out and we played, I think it was VFL Park at Waverley,
Yeah.
That's right. And the sideboard fell down not long after about 4 or 5 overs had gone by, which was amazing. But
was that based on you hitting the actual...
No, I wish it was. I did well to hit the ball at all. It was quite a wet wicket, and I know we struggled a bit, but it was great to be part of that.
And your first bowler, who you bowled?
Imran, I think, bowled the first over that match. I'm not 100% sure. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. And I mean, again, we talked about the SCG walking on the ground and the special nature of that, but walking out to a World Series cricket match and the outfit. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, well, yellow outfits for Australia, sort of a very bad pink for the West Indies, and for the rest of the world was blue. The shoes were the same colour, the caps were the same. But Packer and the boys had a vision that they were going to take cricket to the next level, and to be able to play night cricket was a great example. Playing that game in Sydney under lights and in Melbourne, it was great. But to be wearing the coloured gear was weird. I felt like I had my pyjamas on. We had the yellow pads, yellow gloves. About the only thing that wasn't yellow was, my face and the bat. And to play cricket at that level, playing against the best players in the world day in, day out, and no love lost, because we're all playing for a bonus. And so everybody was trying their guts out to win. Fantastic.
That's a wonderful story. We might come back after the break on TV Arcana, Through the Eyes of a Cricketer. Welcome back to TV Arcana on Through the Eyes of a Cricketer. I have Ian Davis next to me here, and we've been talking quite a bit about World Series cricket. Now, that was a kind of a defection from the ACB to World Series cricket. But there's another twist to that, I believe, Ian.
Yes, well, believe it or not, myself and David Hooks and Mick Malone were all asked to defect and break the contract by the ACB. I was at Trent Bridge playing in England at the time, and a guy who I knew well, Tim Corwell, he was actually chairman of the board, and he'd got me to Sydney to play first grade cricket for Northern District. So I had an affiliation with Tim, and he and I got on well, even though he's a fair bit older than me. And he actually contacted me and said, would you give me half an hour of your time after the game down in the boardroom at the back of the pavilion at Trent Bridge? And out of courtesy, of course, I said yes. I respected him. So I went down after the game, and he said, look, thanks for coming down. I can't believe you young blokes have signed this agreement and ruined your test career for life, and I can't believe you did it. What are you doing with your life? You're throwing away 70 test matches. You're going to be banned. You're not going to be able to play. I can't believe it. I want you to break the contract, and I want you to think about the amount of tests you can play. And you might be Australian captain one day. I can't guarantee anything, but and we're happy to pay the legal fees. But you and Hooksy in particular, you're both crazy. So I actually got the wobbly boot and thought about it, and I thought about defecting, and I showed an interest in that, and so did Hooksy. And next minute we hear that Kerry Packer's coming over to England to have a talk with us, and we hadn't really met him, you know, and have a talk with us. And I'm thinking he's found out through the media over there that I've got the wobbly boot, and Hooksy has as well. Anyway, so next day, Rodney Marsh said to the World Series guys, we're meeting at the Dorchester Hotel tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Kerry's going to meet us there at the in the penthouse room there. So I'm thinking, oh God, I'm worried sick. Hooksy's not worried. He says, don't be stupid. He won't know anything. Don't worry about it. So anyway, the day came and we went up to the Dorchester. I went to go in and try and get into the back row of the seating arrangements, and Tangles bashes me out of the way and end up in the front row with Hooksy. And about 5 minutes later, in comes this daunting figure, 6'2" or 3", whatever Kerry was, big guy, and with a couple of bodyguards. And I looked up and I thought, God, I hope he doesn't know that I'm thinking of defecting. Anyway, he gives us a speech and a motivational speech, and said that he's here, it's going to happen. Don't get the wobbly boot, guys. You know, we're going to make this happen. You guys are going to be paid like you should be paid. It's going to be cricket 1984, because it was 77 then. You're going to be gladiators. It's going to be tough. All this sort of stuff, and reinforced the fact that everything was okay, because there's a lot of drama in the media at the time. And then he said, but there are a couple of guys in this room who think they're going to break a contract with me. Well, at this stage, I'm sliding down the seat with Hooksy. We're about halfway down. And he's looking straight at me. And he said, because, you know, no one breaks a contract with me, I will take you for everything you got. And I didn't have much, by the way. I think I was renting my car and I rented the house. But it was just frightening. And then he never really named us as such, but then it said to me, and I hadn't met him before, he called me Davo. He said, Davo, are you in this or not? Are you part of it? Are you in? And of course I immediately said, yes, of course I am. You know, and he said the same to Hooksy, and Hooksy was even squeakier in the voice than me. And
so he actually said that to you in front of the rest of the players, it was very public.
Are you in?
Exactly.
You in? Yeah. And the inference was there that we were the guys. And he said, okay, good, let's go and have a beer. So that was that. That's what I absolutely said. I'm not moving 1 inch.
Well, that's the most effective way of making you say yes in front of the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And again, that would have been a double defection to you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a curly one.
For a young guy, 24, I think I was, it was pretty scary.
I've just mentioned the word curly one. I'm going to have to bring in your hairdo.
Oh, thank you, mate. Yeah.
I mean, it's very impressive. There's word around town here in Sydney in particular that you've been likened to Peter Sterling. Tell us the story where that's come from.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people have said that to me. I'm a bit better looking than Sterling, but...
I should make this clear. Peter Sterling actually plays rugby league, or did play rugby for Parramatta. Quite a well-known TV personality on his own foot, but I think there's more to it than that. Yeah,
well, we both had the same hairdresser. Mario was our hairdresser. He owned a salon down at Baulkham Hills, and we used to go to him all the time. In fact, we had hair when he was cutting it, and we both ended up like this. But
you had blonde. Both had blonde, long flocks of hair, sitting there together in a.
Looked a bit alike. We were sitting there together this day. We actually ran into each other. We were sitting in the studio together, and Raymond, who was Mario's brother and a hairdresser as well, he was cutting Sterling, and we had a bit of a competition to see who could finish first. But it was hysterical. And every time I see Sterling, you know, I have a bit of a laugh, and we know Mario well. He's a good mate of ours, but I'm actually blaming Mario for the damage that he did, you know, because I had a good head of hair. I think he put too many streaks in my hair or whatever, but it's quite a funny story.
So both of you, in fact, have been hit by the same barber.
Same bloke did it.
We might have to call you now the Sterlo of cricket. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's fine, mate. He was a legend. He's a legend, so I'm happy with that.
So look, again, the transition, we've talked a bit about World Series cricket, and it had a great impact not only on you but on the Australian audience and world audience for that matter. And the likes of Imran Khan, you mentioned the West Indian players, but in pink. That's a major part of your career. But I think there's a lot more to come, and we might talk about that more so after the break on TV Arcana. Welcome back to Through the Eyes of a Cricketer on TV Arcana. I've got Ian Davis here. I was going to move away from World Series cricket, but I think I might actually return, because there's a story to be told there about a certain bank.
Yes, it's a fascinating story.
Which bank?
It was the Commonwealth Bank. I was very lucky because Alan Davidson got me the job there from Nowra, and they were very good to me. They used to pay me while I was playing cricket, so I can't complain about that side. But when I got back from England in 1977, I did get summoned up to the boss's office to find out whether I had signed another commercial agreement with Kerry Packer, and I didn't see it as a commercial agreement. I just saw it as playing cricket, again. But the bank did see it that way, and they unfortunately, because I basically had two contracts or two employees, they felt that was the rule of the bank, and so they let me go, and I remember it very well. And I remember Kerry Packer saying to us that if we're ever victimised in any way, he'd like to know about it. And I agonised about that all afternoon, thinking, I ring Kerry, what do I do anyway? I got in touch with Austin Robinson about it, and he spoke to Kerry, and Kerry took it really, really personally, and the following day took out every cent he had from his compress business, his TV business, and out of the Commonwealth Bank, which was multi-millions of dollars.
Literally, what, 900 to a billion almost, really?
Somewhere around 900 to a billion, which was massive money in those days.
Okay.
Took the lot out, and it's, it was in the Daily Mirror the next day. It's all verified there. Packer takes his money in the bank. It was all over me. So it was an incredible amount of loyalty. And I was, I wasn't the chapel. I wasn't one of the chapels. I was probably one of the lower players there. And to have done that, I think was incredible. And it's an amazing story, really.
Absolutely. I mean, Kerry Packer just shows his loyalty there and then,
yes,
doesn't he?
And
really
quickly. And I'm not going to suffer this. They've hurt one of my boys, and that's it. I'm doing what I'm going to do.
I'm surprised other banks in Australia haven't taken you up on an advertising deal there, because it'd be very good.
Deal, is it? I might use that.
Oh, that's an incredible moment for World Series cricket, the effect of Kerry Packer. We've had Barry Knight on the show before. He talked about some of the aspects of his relationship, so did Dougie. Yes. Quite an impressive man, but a very important man to cricket, you'd have to agree.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, you've moved on from your career now. You played your last match, which was at...
For Australia, that was in England. I played my last game, but I really retired from first class cricket in the late 70s, 79, and having played quite a number of games for New South Wales and 1 year for Queensland. And then
with Tomo?
With Tomo, that's right. And then I played just a couple of seasons of grade cricket, a season with Balmain, and that was great, and also a season with Campbelltown. In fact, it was their very first season in the league, and so it was quite an honour to be their number one cap, which I found out I was the other day. So that won't be surpassed, I guess. It's pretty good.
That's a great thing. Okay, your career's finished with Campbelltown, but another career comes very quickly after that. Tell us about the experience with Dunlop Slasher.
It does, yes. Well, I had 20 odd years at Dunlop Slasher. It was great to be back in the sports industry, and I learnt a lot there. I was actually started as a product manager in the cricket division.
Surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise. They had Viv Richards on the bat then, and I ended up going to India to the factories and learning a lot about product, how it's made. Well, I had 20 odd years at Dunlop Slasher. It was great to be back in the sports industry, and I learnt a lot there. I was actually started as a product manager in the cricket division.
Surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise. They had Viv Richards on the bat then, and I ended up going to India to the factories and learning a lot about product, how it's made, how the bats were made, how the pads were made, the gloves, and I actually sourced over many years and ran that for 10 or 15 years. Signed up a couple of great Australians. Mark Waugh was one, and he was fantastic for the brand. We got him in the key time. He hadn't played a test match when we got him. He was playing Shield cricket, and we really punted on that. And he was a great service to us and stayed with us right through. And then we signed a young Michael Clark when he was about 13. His dad was working in a cricket shop, and we gave him some free gear as a kid, and he was very loyal as well. And he went pretty well right through his entire career until, probably the last two years when Slazenger let him go, and he had the blank bat for a while.
So take us back to that. So Michael Clark at the age of 13, with his dad, you've approached him about a cricket bat sponsorship. Now that in this day and age is almost par for the course.
Yes.
But back then, that must have been quite dramatic. Such a young kid playing for, not anyone at that point in time. Tell us about that moment.
Well, I think he was a gifted young player, a standout, and we're doing quite a bit of business with. It was actually Fred Bennett, who was one of the board members at the time of the cricket board. He'd taken teams away overseas. He was renowned. He had his own cricket shop, and Clarkie's dad worked there, and so we had a business relationship to start with, and I can't remember how it all started, but the opportunity came where Michael, needed some gear, and we thought, we give him some gear and give him a kick up, in life, and give him a chance to get some gear and play his cricket, and it wouldn't be an expense to the family, and help him out. And he was loyal forever on. And when he actually did make it to playing for New South Wales, he came in, we secured him up with a contract, and then from there we signed him for a long time. He must have been 10 years with the brand after that. So,
well, that shows a great deal of loyalty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very strong sign of the character of Michael Clarke
very
as well.
loyal, very loyal indeed. Mm.
Okay, now that was a great period in terms of Michael Clarke and the likes of Mark Waugh.
Yes.
But then a very interesting point happened in a certain test series with Michael Clarke. Tell us about that.
That's right. That was when he was playing against India, and he got the 300, and he had the blank bat. And I was doing a bit of consulting for Spartan at the time. Kunal Sharma's the guy who owns that business, and he and I were in the Legends room there, which is just a corporate box. And Kunal sort of said, "I think we should sign this guy up." I thought, God, it's going to be not easy. And
so he had a blank bat, and there was no gimmick to that. It was simply he had a blank bat.
He had a blank bat. They'd parted ways, Schlesinger and Clarke. I wasn't involved in that at the time. I'd left Schlesinger.
Yeah.
And Spartan were trying to get some players, and what a better player than Michael, who's the Australian captain, and I knew him obviously well. And so Kunal asked whether I'd introduce him, and they ended up. I rang Clarke, and he was quite keen to meet up, and they caught up. We met in one of the rooms in the back of the New South Wales offices there, near
Cricket New South Wales.
Cricket New South Wales, yeah. And had a great chat, and they hit it off really well, and I'd known Clarkey for a long time, and we came to terms. And Clarkey was very particular about his bat. He wanted a skinnier handle, and he wanted the bat to be a certain weight, 2.9 I think it was. He liked a bit of bow in it, and so he's very, very particular about his bat. And so we made that up, and he's particular about all his gear. And that lasted for quite some time.
I mean, I can't forget also that relation to Michael Clarke. It's very significant, and the transition to a new brand, Spartan.
Yes.
And as you know now, he's certainly been using that gear for some time,
Yeah.
and it's still post his Test career is
Yes.
well and truly in that
Yeah,
brand.
yeah, no, he's
Very
a very loyal
innovative.
guy. Very loyal guy.
Now, I wanted to talk more about another gentleman who played a little bit of cricket, Donald Bradman. Now, again, your relationship with Dunlop Schlesinger. Tell us about the relationship there.
Well, I knew Don, obviously, he was a selector when I played,
Yep.
but I didn't know him, really that well. I think selectors and players were a little bit adrift, weren't they? And I had the opportunity, I got a phone call from a guy called Rob Mansfield, who is one of the great businessmen in Australia. He started Optus. He started McDonald's in Australia. He also was at Optus and at Fairfax, and has a great corporate career. He rang me and he said, "Look, I'm on the board of the Bradman Trust. We want to raise some money to build this nice museum in Bowral as quickly as we can before Don passes. And we're raising money. We thought we'd do a Bradman cricket range, and I thought I'd give you the chance to do it." And I thought, how good's that? So I rang a guy called Paul Moore, who was chairman of the CEO of Pac Brands at the time, and said, "What do you think?" Because we've got Schlesinger. He said, "Oh no, it'd be fantastic. Let's do it." And so we put together this range of bats, which had to be approved by Don.
Right.
We put this range together, and we called the bat the Legend, and the 450. The 99.9. His average and his highest test score, I think, was 454 or whatever, and did this range where it came down in classes, but nice range, and a kids range. And I remember going to Adelaide to meet Sir Donald in the offices at Dunlop to show him the range. I was quite excited because it looked great. We had Bradman right down the back of the bat. The bats were really classy, nice maroon colour, looked great. And I walked in and I showed him, and he thought, yeah, they look great. And we were going on pretty well. And he said to me, "But I don't like the handles." And I've gone, "What do you mean don't like the handles?" And I always used an oval-shaped handle. You have to change all the handles in the bats. And I'd already ordered about 3,000, mind you. And I don't know how many were made. There's a lot made. And I thought, oh my God. And I said, "You use an oval-shaped handle? You're kidding." I said, "I thought the oval-shaped handle was invented in 1990-something. The guy in Western Australia made them for a company." And he said, no. Always use an oval handle that far back. And so he was 60 years before his time. He was
Amazing.
so advanced because he said it fit the hand better and all that. You need to change the handles. And so I quickly snuck out the back, and I made a phone call to India, which wasn't easy in those days.
I can imagine.
I got straight through. Maybe I was going to the toilet or whatever. And I got straight through to a mate of mine, Sondi Corporation, who is one of the world leaders in making cricket bats in Jalandhar, down in the Punjab in India.
Jalandhar, of course, a very famous place for batting.
I got straight through, which I couldn't believe. And I gone, I'm with Sir Donald Bradman, and you're not going to believe this, but he doesn't like the handles on the bats. He wants them oval shaped. How many have you made? He'd already made about 2,000. I've gone, oh God. So I said, well, make sure the rest have an oval shaped handle. Don't worry about the 2,000. We'll sneak them in. And I went back to Don and said, no drama. It's all fixed, But I was really fascinated by that.
It's quite an incredible story, actually.
Yeah.
But that's not all. The Bradman bat had that charisma, and Bradman himself had that charisma.
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, the sales we sold into the retailers around Australia, and it sold in quite well. And then all of a sudden, about 4 or 5 weeks into the sales period and the cricket had started, I get this phone call and from a couple of the leading retailers saying, look, we're having trouble with the blokes are bringing back the bats, wanting to take the Bradman sticker off the back. Because they're playing in the parks, and all the competition or the team they're playing against, all the players from first to second slip are giving them an absolute sledging like you can't believe. You think you're Donald Bradman, mate, and all this sort of stuff. And the guys are, I can't handle this. So we thought, what do we do, because this is going to affect the sales and all the rest of it, and we want to make plenty of money for Don. So we thought we need a player to give it credibility. And at the time, Richie Richardson was in Australia with the West Indies team, and he had a blank bat. I didn't really know Richie, but I thought, damn it, I'm going to ring him and see if we can sign him up. So I rang him at his hotel, and he did know me, he knew of me, and which was great. And I went and met with him, and I said, look, for the rest of the tour, which was 4 tests, I think, would you be prepared to use a Sir Donald Bradman cricket bat? It's the best English willow. It's a beautiful bat, so you're not going to have any worries there. And we'll pay you $12,000. And he said, look, I'm not so worried about the $12,000, but I would love to meet Sir Donald Bradman and have dinner with him or lunch with him or whatever. So I rang Bradman and I told him what was going on, and Bradman said, yeah, absolutely, bring him. When he comes to Adelaide, or bring him to Adelaide, bring him around and we'll have lunch in the backyard of my house at Kensington in Adelaide. Well, I put it all together, and there's pictures in the paper again to confirm that it happened, and there they were in the back, and they had a great chat, and obviously Richie was besotted by all this, so rang me the next day and said, oh look, can't thank you enough, it was amazing just talking to him and meeting him. He said, I'm definitely going to sign, and by the way, we'll take that $12,000 as well.
Oh, so the 12,000 was in there again, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah, but great story, that one.
Oh, certainly.
And as soon as he started using the bat, the credibility was there. If it's good enough to be out there, it's a credible. But we did make the Bradman thing a little bit more insignificant. It was very loud, so it worked well.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that currency of the player helped the sales, of course.
It did, a lot, yeah.
Now, again, we'll go back to Bradman and Neil Harvey and their selection period when you were under that.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the experiences you had there. And we've gone through it a little bit,
Yeah.
but there's more to that story, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I do remember well those particular, because they were selectors at the time, and along with, I think, Phil Ridings and Sam Loxton were the selectors at the time, and I was, 20 years of age and in awe of those people. So to see them around the dressing room, it was like Mr. Harvey and all that sort of stuff. I really didn't feel comfortable talking to them, to be honest with you, particularly at 20 years of age. But they were very strong. They said you're in this team. You need to understand you're part of it and have the confidence to go ahead and play.
I mean, what I can recall that team selection period was very static. The teams were held together strong, and there was
Yes.
a core nucleus of players.
Yes.
And that's probably a great model to any cricketing nation now in the world, to have that core bunch of players and not to chop and change.
Correct.
I think the Australian team can probably listen to that too at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a few times where they chop and change.
Yes.
One day all test.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was, they just got back from the 72 tour of England where they did really well, and the song was there, Come On Aussie, Come On, and all that stuff. And Ian Chappell was the captain. Ian just had that ability to unite men. He was, a great captain, and everyone respected him and loved him. And he's a tough man, but he was also a man's man, and loyalty like you can't believe, and a tough competitor. And so they formed a great bond. There was Lilly, I think it was his first tour, and he did well. Bob Massey got the 16 wickets. Walters played, well. In England, he wasn't renowned for being great, but he always played well. Greg was there. They had a great side, Stackpole, Sheehan, Redpath. And when they did make the change in 73, they'd actually dropped Ian Redpath, who I was one of my favourite cricketers anyway.
Yeah.
And so I felt weird about that. And I think they did too. You know, we went on the tour in '74 to New Zealand. I remember being around the bar. There was myself and Ray Bright. We were 20. The rest were all 28. You know, and they had a niche of blokes. And you know, you do feel a bit out of it. Although they tried to embrace us at all times, but to replace someone like Redpath, because they wanted some young blood coming through, was an interesting one.
So we've talked about the career and also your post-career in Dunlop Schlesinger. Let's talk about the modern age of cricket now. Obviously there's a lot of T20, a lot of one-day cricket and the whole IPL scenario. What's your take on that and even the current players?
Yeah, well, I think, don't want to be old-fashioned, I think, you know, cricket's gone forward. I think the biggest change in cricket's number one, the helmet. I think bringing that in has made it not easier, but well, even though the Hughes thing happened, which was terrible, it has made the game for the batsman to feel safer. You can imagine facing Lily Thompson, you know, the West Indies, the great West Indian team, bowling 150k without a helmet. There is a part of you that's scared, you know, and frightened of being hit and all the rest of it.
Did you ever get hit yourself?
I got hit a couple of times. Alan Hurst, I don't remember him. He hit me in just under the jaw and basically knocked me out, and I had a massive bruise and I was crook for a while. And I had a few stitches over the eye. In England, I got about 15 stitches. But other than that, you know, obviously plenty on the legs and the arms and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of players did get hit, and a lot of players still get hit today, I guess. But I just think, even though some people say, oh, the helmets made the players feel a lot more confident about hooking off their head and all that sort of stuff, and the players of old, when they didn't have the helmet, were able to get out of the way, I do still think it gives you that security. And I think the other big change is the gear. Obviously, the bat is massive. You know, they're all 2 or 3 inches thick on the side. Our bats were pencils, you know, and the bats today, you flick it 20 yards over the boundary without much trouble. I think that's added a lot of runs, and the boundaries are coming a bit as well. But the bats are enormous. That's a huge difference. The pads and the gloves with the certain plastisodes and the dampening of the ball hitting your hand and all that sort of stuff has changed dramatically. I mean, you get hit badly on the finger in the 70s and you broke your finger. Today you've got a good chance of not being hurt, and I think the protection all over is great. But the bats are just incredible, and they've made it a batter's game, I think.
Neil Harvey told me only recently last week about, with the bats at the time, you would follow through more, whereas now all they do is just punch and the ball goes far.
Correct.
And that kind of takes away from the ability to bat in his sense of the word.
Yeah. I hate being old-fashioned, all that sort of stuff, and I don't want to be. I don't want to say it was better in my day or whatever. No. But you know, there's some great straight stroke players back in our day, and there's some great ones today. I just think he's probably right that you know, Clarkie's not a big bloke, but he could flick it, you know, and belt it down the ground pretty easily. And you look at Warner, I mean, he's a freak, isn't he? I mean, he hits the ball so hard anyway, and with the big bat, he smashes it out of the park without much trouble. I think the bats are a dramatic change, and the way they've made them, you know, they're able to disperse the wood into the right areas, so you can really miss-hit one and still hit it for 4. Where in our day, you know, I saw a couple of my bats, they're ridiculously small, and you think, how did you ever hit one out of the ground?
Good technique.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah. But I think it's amazing difference.
Thanks, Ian. It's been a fantastic time to talk to you and a great story to tell.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.